Hi, my name is Krista Lee, creative producer here at the Candler Foundry and the proud host of the Candler in Conversation podcast. I'm so excited for this partnership that we've done with the Doctor of Ministry program for this series on chaplaincy. We hope that these episodes not only inspire you to learn more about chaplaincy, but they also encourage you to serve communities locally and globally. And now it's time for the episode with our guest host, Dr. Roger Nam.
I'm pleased to have today's conversation with Dr. Letitia Campbell, my colleague. She has been a part of Emory at some capacity since 2005. She's an Atlanta native, and she has degrees from Davidson College, Union Seminary in New York, Oxford University as well, and a PhD from Emory. What's really interesting about Dr. Campbell is her PhD is not in practical theology, even though she runs all the fieldwork experiences for our Candler students. Her degree is in ethics. And I could see in our contextual education program an infusion of thought and self and moral reflection on your vocational and spiritual discernment within the entire curriculum. I'm pleased to welcome my guest, Dr. Letitia Campbell. Well, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much.
First, begin by telling us your official title and the courses you teach at Campbell.
Fantastic. I'm assistant professor in the practice of ethics and society, and I direct the Contextual Education 1 and CPE programs here at Campbell.
Okay, so we use the word Con Ed all the time at Campbell. What is contextual education from the perspective of the student?
So at Campbell, we use the term contextual education to refer to all of the hands-on, practical, experiential learning that's integrated into the curriculum for all of our degree programs. So that's the big picture. And the Office of Contextual Education, we run 5 programs: Contextual Education 1, Contextual Education 2, the Teaching Parish program, the internship program, and CPE, or Clinical Pastoral Education. So these are all ways that students get hands-on experience, not alongside the curriculum, but really in conversation with all the parts of the curriculum.
Right. So what are some of the sites that students go to get this fieldwork experience?
So in the Contextual Education 1 program, which is the program I direct, students are in community-based, social ministry, or clinical types of settings. So that might include settings where they're serving as chaplains or chaplain interns, prisons, hospitals, retirement communities, community settings. Students also might be working in social ministries, working with people who are unhoused, people who are in recovery, people who are in transitional points in their lives in a variety of ways. We have students who work in refugee and immigrant communities. We have students who are working with community organizing projects, community organizations, nonprofit organizations. So really a very, very broad range of organizations where students are engaging the community and working in ministries beyond the walls of the congregation.
And I appreciate that I'm also involved with the teaching. The faculty also are. So when I had my first year, these students would go out and do their experience with Con Ed. Then they would be in the classroom with me and a pastor, and we kind of debrief their experience through reading, through understanding, through discussion. And it's a really amazing to see the transformation that happens with the field work. And it actually humbles professors. Like, we are not the say-all in classroom through our brilliant lectures, our ideas, our scholarship, but it's that field experience that I think is really transformational. So you and I had the privilege of serving on a task force to revise the curriculum. And what was surprising to me, maybe not surprising to you, is we went to all of our constituents. We went to current students, alums, pastoral leaders, denominational leaders, and we asked them about our curriculum. And all of them were consistent in saying, Con Ed is amazing. We need to keep Con Ed. Why do you think we had such a united voice supporting Con Ed as foundational to the seminary education?
Well, you're right. I wasn't totally surprised by that.
Yeah, I was surprised. I knew you were surprised.
I get to hear year in and year out from students who are saying, this was the heart of my seminary experience. This was very transformative for my theology, for my vocational understanding. And I think there are a couple of reasons for that. One is it's a hands-on experience where students are getting to practice the skills that are essential for ministry. And they gain confidence, but also they're gaining the ability to be in ministry in the wide range of ways they're going to be doing that in their professional, vocational lives. I also think Con Ed is a place where students and faculty have the experience to learn from the wisdom of communities. Right. So whether that is through listening at the bedside of someone who is seriously ill, meeting with a woman who's incarcerated to plan worship together, serving in a local congregation that is in the turmoil of conflict. All of these are places where we get the chance to learn from wisdom that is not contained on a campus or in a library. And, we know that God cannot be contained and that theological insight cannot be contained in our academic structures, as valuable as they are. So this is a chance to really be in the world and learn from the wisdom that comes from a whole range of places where God is present. Con Ed is also a place of integration. So it's not that contextual education is valuable apart from the other disciplines of the seminary curriculum, biblical studies and church history and practical theology. It's that contextual education can be a place where those disciplines are in conversation with the kind of theological questions that arise from the nitty-gritty experience of being in and engaging the world. So I think that space of integration is part of why it's so valued by our students and our alumni and by the communities they serve. Because that's the task for which we are preparing students, really not to just know what is in each of our disciplines, whether it's ethics or biblical studies, but to be able to know that information and that the wisdom that comes from that disciplinary reflection and be able to bring that into conversation with their work in communities in the world.
A very concrete say. That's really helpful to hear because sometimes I think my world is my 3-unit Bible class that I teach, and there's no crossing into any other field or anything else. And to see the students take what I teach and to know that they are integrating that with other fields within an actual concrete context for ministry, I think is really refreshing and helpful for me to think through as I plan my classes.
Yeah. Aristotle talks about phronesis, practical wisdom. And I think that's what we are helping people to cultivate in contextual education. Not instead of these other disciplinary kinds of knowledge, but in conversation with real work.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you for articulating that. You also direct CPE. What is CPE and why is it integrated with our curriculum?
Clinical Pastoral Education, or CPE for short, is a kind of intensive hands-on experience of pastoral care practice in a hospital or other setting that can be a really important part of professional education for ministry. And this type of education involves a lot of experience, the practice of providing pastoral or spiritual care to people in crisis in many cases. And it involves ongoing reflection with an experienced supervisor and with other peers who are also learning. This is a kind of education that can be very valuable for people entering a whole range of ministry vocations, a whole range of vocations. For people who are interested in professional chaplaincy, it's an essential part of the process of becoming trained and recognized and credentialed as a chaplain. But it's also very valuable for people who are entering congregational ministry, lay ministry, teaching, counseling, a whole range of things. So there are a number of denominations that require it for ordination for this reason.
You describe CP as intensive, use some superlatives in your explanation. What advice would you give to like a recent MDiv grad or current MDiv student that is entering this CPE, education experience? What advice would you give to them so they can get the most out of that?
A couple of things I say to students who are preparing to begin a CPE experience. One is to approach the experience with openness.
Okay.
You have to be ready to learn from experience and for that experience to be valuable for learning. And so I think approaching it with a sense of openness. Attending to your own emotional and physical and spiritual well-being while you're engaged in this work is also essential, as it is for any form of ministry. So I encourage students who are preparing for CPE to think in advance about what their rhythms of self-care are going to be, including in the most practical, daily ways,
Right.
as well as what their support networks and communities are going to be while they're in the process.
Right.
CPE is structured in a way that provides a lot of support because you're working with an experienced educator and in community with other people. But one of the things students learn through these processes, both in contextual education and in CPE, is how essential it is to really attend to our own well-being and inner life while we're in community and serving with other people.
Our ministries are long, and
we hope
it's such a vital part of, and often kind of counterintuitive. We enter this serving profession wanting to serve others and communities, and so that deep well that we have becomes so shallow if we just deplete it so quickly with these intense experiences. That's a very important point. We are turning to the Doctor of Ministry. We are launching the Chaplaincy Doctor of Ministry track for the first time this fall. It's already our biggest track of the 4 tracks on the Doctor of Ministry. And like any doctoral program at Candler, it requires a certain amount of years of education and experience before entering the program. And so some students will have a lot of chaplaincy experience. Some will have more congregational experience, are making the turn to chaplaincy. What are some of the characteristics of an effective congregational leader that you think will transfer well into a chaplaincy setting?
In a conversation some years ago with Rear Admiral Margaret Kibben, who at the time was the chief of chaplains for the Navy, Rear Admiral Kibben said that in the future, she imagined the skills for congregational ministry would be more similar to the skills needed for chaplaincy. And by that, she meant the ability to provide care for and meet people who brought a wide range of religious and spiritual experiences with them to the moment, and often to meet people at the point of crisis. So people who you might not have a multi-generational relationship with their family or even many years of experience with that individual, who might be seeking connection or care in a moment of transition. And I think that is true, that congregational clergy are already serving in much more diverse settings, both outside their congregations, but often within those congregations as well. And that's a hallmark of chaplaincy. Chaplains are serving in spaces where they're going to be working with a wide range of people who bring a wide set of backgrounds and spiritual identities to their encounter.
Right.
And the ability to meet people in those moments with an openness and a sensitivity and a skill that takes seriously that diversity, I think is essential in both congregational and chaplaincy settings.
When you say openness and sensitivity and skill, that's exactly what we want in our people who are candidates for ordination for parish settings, precisely, and what we'd want for our chaplains as well.
And what we would want for our own pastors and chaplains for ourselves.
That's what we hope to be as professors too. So we have this group of students, a cohort coming this fall, and they'll be with us for 3 years. They'll take classes, they'll meet 4 times in their 3 years, and they'll finish with a Doctor of Ministry with a track in chaplaincy. What is your hope for these students? They already have MDivs. They already have at least 5 years experience in some form of ministry, and they're coming qualified and eager and with critical thinking skills and a great broad range of experience. We have students from hospital settings, from school settings, from corporate settings, from incarcerated population settings. And so what is your hope for these students as they finish their degree with us?
That's a great question. I'm excited that we're welcoming such a broad and diverse group of folks into this first chaplaincy D-Min cohort. One of my hopes is that people will come bringing the wealth of insight and experience that they are bringing from their years of ministry experience, and that they will bring the theological questions that arise from that experience. That's what is going to make this a rich cohort, is that we have all of these folks coming from different settings and bringing that knowledge and those questions with them.
Right.
So one of my hopes is that they'll get to learn from each other over the course of these years. I hope people will have a chance to dig deep into the questions that they're bringing with them, that maybe they don't have time to dig deep on in the day-to-day of their work. And that they'll be able to work closely with Candler faculty from across the curriculum to think about the questions that are driving them at this moment in their careers.
Right. This is also our most religiously diverse cohort of students we've ever had in any degree program. And I'm really excited about that. And as you speak, I realize this is an opportunity for us to learn about these religious traditions from leaders of these traditions. And I expect it to be a very symbiotic, mutually learning environment for both professors and students and the entire cohort. I hope the same.
Yeah. Well, and that's what we hope for in all of our classrooms, right? And especially with a degree program that's designed for people who bring such professional experience with them.
Well, you have such rich experience in ministry in different forms. You have such a wonderful educational background. You were even a journalist during the newsprint days, and you bring all that. And I could see how all of that leads to the way that you direct our contextual education for our students. You do such a wonderful job with that. So I'm grateful for that part as we partner together at Campbell. And so thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing all that experiences with us today.
Thank you for having me.